Chapter 5. Why Men Rape Women, a Psychological Theory. Rape attributes to some psychological problem in the offender. Rapist, a person who has a serious psychological difficulty which handicap him in his relationship to other people. This discharges under stress through sexual violence. Traumatizing and unpleasant childhood experiences developed a personality defect leading to sexual inadequacy. Rapists suffer from personality defects, emotional disturbances. The inadequacy leads to fantasy of strength, powerful above all, irresistible. The fantasy leads to action, and this action leads to rape. The socio-psychological theory attributes rape to sexual permissiveness in society. From a sociology's point of view, rapists are viewed as normal with no psychological difference from the average population. Some rely on the feminist theory and view rape as an expression of gender inequality. Chapter 5. Using Women in Men's Masculinity Contest. Society imposes competitive habits, especially on men, since they are pressured by their peers to prove their masculinity. Social pressure is a key factor in this whole dilemma, since they don't want to be seen as inadequate. Learning some basic pointers: the masculine role. Stereotypical, seen in movies, TV shows, and heard in some music today. Men have been taught to play the role and be as aggressive as possible to carry out the sexual conquest. Peer pressure. Men want to earn a macho reputation. They don't want to be seen as weak, soft, gentle, since those are female characteristics. They want to show off their masculine qualities, be aggressive, forceful, violent. To prove it, a contest. Sex. The objective is to score. The object, women, no matter the circumstances. The most respected player is the one who scores the most without having to pay for it. To be compared to competitive sports, such as soccer, football, basketball, etc., the objective is to score. The winner is the team that has scored the most. As the masculinity contest goes on, men tend to dehumanize women, especially through the language used in regards to their sexual intercourse. They describe the encounters as banging, screwing, scoring. It's seen as a manly game of violence to give off the tough sound of conquest. The truth is, they don't really care about the end results for women. They may end up humiliating, degrading, shaming, hurting, or terrifying her as a human being. They label women as a piece of meat, a whore, a piece of trash, and
Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Sonia, and a couple things before I get started in this video is one, excuse my hair and my attires because I just got off of work. Two, excuse my background as well because my room is a mess and I haven't had time to clean it, so I just popped over a blanket. 3, my dog may be coming in and out of this video, and 4, I am going to be reading on my notes. If I'm looking down most of the time, that's the reason why. But into the video. So the chapter that my group and I have been assigned is Chapter 5, Rape and Child Molestation. The two sections that I'm going to be focusing on today is Consequences of Rape and the Feeling of Being Raped Again. For those of you guys that are trying to figure out which book it's in, or you don't know how the book is or whatever, this is the book. This lovely book right here. So let's get started. So for the first section where it says the consequence of rape, just to shorten that up because it is a very small little paragraph, it's pretty much describing how rape is a lot different from murder or from any other crime, in which survivors keep suffering from the rape itself because they feel like it's going to happen again and again and again. So moving on to the other section following that the subtopic to that main topic, which is the rape survivor response. Okay, so this can happen. The attackers can be either someone you know or a stranger. So if you get raped by a stranger, it won't be as crucial as being raped by someone that you know closely, because with the person that you know closely, you're gonna see them around. It's bound to happen. If either it's a family member, a friend, or a coworker, whatever, you're bound to see them around. Unlike a stranger, you won't really ever see them again, unless you randomly see them. Then that's really bad. But yeah, those two may vary, but the one that varies a lot more is the one when you get attacked by someone you know, because you're bound to see them pretty much on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to be talking also about another thing, which is, I'm going to read the paragraph where it comes from, and then I'm going to explain it to you guys. It says, some survivors may voluntarily engage in sexual relations with their assailant when they meet him again after the rape. Other survivors may later marry their rapist, whom they may or may not have met prior to the rape. So pretty much that little section and what I researched on just I guess extra research I can say, is that pretty much those that do come back to their attacker, sometimes it's not by choice, sometimes it's just they might get raped by that same person again if it's someone they know. But some of them may marry them because they may have gotten raped by a stranger that they didn't know, obviously, and then they end up meeting them and then they get married, and then the victim themselves might be, oh my gosh, this is someone who raped me long ago. So that's the reason for that. Another thing is that when these survivors, obviously survive their act of being raped, they do fear, but they do fear, obviously, them getting raped again. They do go through deep depression. They do sometimes, try to commit suicide, like they get suicidal thoughts. Some of them may actually go through with the act of go through the act of suicide, or they don't. And sometimes the anger and the frustration and the depression and the sadness and all these emotions overwhelming them, they do tend to take their life just because they just can't deal with it anymore. Another thing too is that sometimes some victims can actually pull themselves out of that dark hole, I guess you can say, and they do continue on with their life, where they just try to forget about what had happened to them. But others, they fall into the hole, I guess that's a way of saying it. They fall back into the hole where they tend to be with someone or marry someone that is similar to their attacker. Like the victim will are used to the feeling of being in a very abusive relationship. I guess that's the way that you can say it. Okay, so for another thing, social class, it tends to usually happen to those that are in the middle class, usually because of where you're living, or your income, or your surroundings and stuff like that. Unlike upper class people, they usually tend not to be victims of rape, but some of them usually are, just because of their lack of alertness or awareness of what's going on around them. Okay, I already talked about that. Okay, so stranger rape. Stranger rape pretty much means someone that gets raped by a stranger. These type of rapes are usually more violent, and they tend to pry on those that have been raped before. So they're the people that are getting raped by a stranger, there you go, are usually tend to be people that have been rape victims before, or they pry on those that are very vulnerable and stuff like that. Okay, so those that have been attacked by an acquaintance, or usually called acquaintance rape, they have more fear of this person because this person is usually always around them. So let's just say, for example, a girl gets raped by her uncle. Obviously the girl has no way to get out or whatever, or to leave or anything like that, because the uncle is always around, unless the victim says something to her family and says, hey, you know, my uncle raped me, like I can't be near him and such. But if they don't say anything, most likely, you know, like my example, the uncle is going to be around and there's no way for the victim to get out of it, just because, like I said, the uncle is always going to be around unless the uncle leaves or whatever. Okay, so there are two phases of this organization, and one is acute phase and lingering phase, and I'm just actually going to read them straight off from the book. It's on page 95 on the second paragraph. So I'm just going to read them off because they're pretty straightforward. And okay, for acute phase, during this phase, most survivors subscribe to extreme fear, shock, humiliation, embarrassment, self-blame, or anxiety. And then for lingering phase, which often lasts for a few months, but may persist for several years. In this phase, survivors experience a variety of phobiatic reactions, including the fear of being alone and fear of sex. So the first acute phase is pretty much straightforward and straight to the point, but I actually want to elaborate just a little bit on lingering phase. By phobiatic reactions, obviously when it's said, when the fear of them being alone or the fear of sex itself, these people that go through lingering phases, they always have to have someone with them, like pretty much like, I guess you could say, like the buddy system. They always have to be around somebody, or they have to be around a crowd just for their protection, so they can feel safe. I guess I can use the example of my dog. He's always like around me or my mom just because that's how he feels safe. That's his safe haven, I guess you can say. So for these victims, they have to be around people so they can feel safe, so they just can feel safe. The fear of sex, the fear of sex, it can literally scar these people because they've been raped, so that fears them. So when they, you know, find someone and they want to settle down and whatever and have kids, they won't really be fully able to commit to, you know, having sex or the act of making love because they just been scarred because somebody had raped them. Okay, so another thing, these are not really phases or anything, but one is called inward direct feelings and the other one is outward direct feelings. And as well, I'm just going to read them off the page because they're pretty simple. So for inward, it's pretty much fear, depression, anxiety, and self-blame. You see, pretty straightforward. And for outward direct is such of anger, revenge, and the courage to have the rapist kept behind bars. So for outward direct, these are for the victims that want justice. These are for the victims that want to see their rapist or their attacker behind bars. They are not afraid to say, I wish you were dead. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, doing just outside research, I have looked up on YouTube videos or just read articles and whatever about stuff like this. Like, okay, what do some victims do after they've been raped? And some of the details are like beyond crazy. Some of them say like they just want to chop off, you know, their private part or just kill them themselves because what they did to them was so, like, it was just so much for them to deal with. So like they want to literally get rid of this person. So that's pretty much more outward. So inward is more like themselves, like all alone, but outward is like they want justice. They want to do, you know, pretty much just chop this person's head off. Okay, so for the very last section, which is the feeling of being raped, I'm actually just going to read off my notes, just because this section is pretty this whole section was pretty straightforward, but I actually want to focus on some of their key points. So for the feeling of being raped again, police officers have actually tried to change their tactics on how they approach a victim that's just been raped, to be more polite, more respectful, more caring, careful about their words and how they word things. Usually they tend to, when a victim is getting, you know, I guess, when the cop is talking to a victim, the victim usually tends to feel like a second rape, and pretty much what a second rape is, while the cop is asking them questions and trying to get information about what happened, it's pretty much making the victim feel the act of the rape itself once again. Plus also sometimes how if the cop isn't careful, the cop can actually sometimes make the victim feel like it's their fault for being raped, like why did you wear those open toe shoes, like you were just asking for it type of thing. So they will tend to blame themselves for what had happened, and they will actually be like, you know what, maybe it was my fault, I should have never wore those sandals that showed my toes, stuff like that. I know that's not really how it is, but like that's just an example. There's another one called psychological rape. Okay, for this one, it's pretty much more based on a court setting. Like if you're in the courtroom, and you're having people focusing on the victim. It could be family, friends, the jury, the judge, the defendant, whatever. They're all focusing on the victim and what the victim's gonna do and what the victim's wearing, I guess, stuff like that. That's how I interpret it. And in some court cases, they look for evidence, testimonies, backgrounds on the victim and the attacker to see, like, okay, what are their backgrounds? You know, they look closely into their testimonies. They look closely into the evidence. There's another thing. I know this is not a really proper way to say it, but the crazy defendants lawyers, where they literally dig up, the victim's testimony, and if the victim was in another court about rape and such like that. So they look extremely back. Also, they also want to look for the victim's drinking habits, drug habits, if they had, if this has happened more than once, if they've been in the court, like I said, they've been in the court system more than once, and such like that. They would also, so pretty much the defendants would just go beyond crazy. The defendant's lawyer, which is the attacker's lawyer, see like, okay, what is this person's background? Has she been in the court and such before? Many judges actually do allow this, which I think is pretty weird. Pretty much without it, the defendant cannot get a fair trial. So pretty much what I've noticed in this is that, or what I got from it was that if the victim claims that this has been her first act of rape, or this has been her first rape, they will look back to see in case if she or he had reported an incident of being raped, and to see who won that case. And if the victim won, then most likely the victim will win again. But if the attacker won, then they're going to be saying that, oh, the victim's lying, the victim allowed the attacker and such like that. It's pretty crazy. So I'm actually going to read again, a section. The last bottom section is on page 97, and pretty much what it's saying is that this is what a judge did in 1993. The trial of 4 young men in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, who were charged with the raping of a 17-year-old woman. This judge allowed in evidence of the woman's past experience of sexual promiscuity on the ground that the defendants could only get a fair trial if they were allowed to use evidence. In presenting the evidence, the defense argued that the woman had willingly performed sex acts with the young men. Similarly, in 2004, the judge at the trial of basketball player Kobe Bryant let the defense present evidence about the accuser's previous sexual activities with somebody else. Then, pretty much saying that, to drop the charges on Kobe Bryant, I guess, because the person that was blaming Kobe Bryant for rape, she's done it in the past before. So pretty much that's how they do it, I guess, nowadays, where if the victim has claimed rape before, but the victim had lost because the victim allowed the attacker to, that doesn't make sense. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is, if the victim says she was raped before, and now she's claiming rape again, they will look to the court case back then to see if she had won or lost. And if she had won, then most likely she's telling the truth again. And if oh, that's so weird. And if she had lost the case, most likely she's lying. So therefore, you know, the defendant will be set free. But that's how I see it. I don't know if you guys see it like that. But yet again, this was chapter 5, rape and child molestation, and I was doing these sections of, if I can remember, because right now I can't remember, consequences of rape and the feelings of being raped again. Hopefully you guys understood. If not, you guys can go ahead and, you know, email me or whatever. Yeah, this section was really short. It was about 4 pages, I believe. Really short, straightforward stuff. So hopefully you guys understood it. Hopefully it was a good video. And but yeah, have a good one. Good luck on your test, and bye.